Hi, and welcome to the Symphonina Foundation podcast. I'm your guest host, Jordan Jinosko, and an ambassador for the Symphonina Foundation. It's my pleasure to be able to be with you today. Today I have the honor of speaking with Conductor Alexandra Enyart. Alexandra, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. And for this, I'm happy to be Alexis. I always say that Alexandra is for my mom and my website, but thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh, cool.
But Alexis is for friends, and I'm looking forward to becoming friends with everybody listening.
Oh, great. Alexis, I'm going to read your bio, which is really impressive. Alexandra Enyart has been hailed by the Chicago Theater Review as, quote, one of Chicago's greatest operatic gifts. She's performed with the Atlanta Opera, Australian Contemporary Opera Company, Opera Santa Barbara, and many others around the country and globe. She has served as the Chicago Sinfonietta Fellow and as a Turn the Spotlight Fellow with Chicago Opera Theater Music Director Lidiya Yankovskaya. Am I saying that right?
Lidiya Yankovskaya.
Yankovskaya. Okay, nice. Alexander has won various prestigious awards as a conductor, and she's served on various councils and panels in her celebrated career. So yeah, I want to dive straight into the first question, which is, Alexis, how did you get into music, and also how did you get into this crazy world of conducting operas and orchestras?
Sure. I grew up, my parents were musicians, and I grew up in the musical theater pit. My dad was a pit drummer and an accountant by day, but a pit drummer by night. And my mom played from the woodwind book. And so my earliest memories, I was up in just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm from Kentucky, but they would go play in Cincinnati. And they played on the Showboat Majestic. And this old paddle boat that had a theater loft, and then down was this theater. So my earliest memories are being up in this paddle, like literally in a paddle boat, looking down at the stage, watching musicals, classic musicals, and some, more modern, but a big variety of different musicals. And that was just something that had always kind of been around. And my family was also like the big high school thing where I was in Kentucky was the marching band. So there was always this expectation that you would play at least enough to be in the marching band. And so I did. I played clarinet. And I thought that I was just doing it for the social benefits of the marching band, which at the time I kind of was. I didn't really care. Until I heard Shostakovich's Festive Overture. And it starts with this great clarinet run. Amazing piece. I mean, it's a fanfare for the Olympics. Just fantastic. Really exciting. And it totally captured me. And I said, how fun is this? And that was the first time that I was really aware of how exciting the orchestra was, because I'd only been in a band world. And I knew that I wanted to get involved with them, like in the abstract for sure. But I was like, how do I do that? I don't even live where there is an orchestra. I mean, I could go see professional orchestras, but I couldn't play on one. I couldn't do anything there. So it wasn't until college that I really got to play in the orchestra. And I loved orchestral music. And, I didn't realize how much it was surrounding my life already by that point. I went to the University of Louisville, which specialized a lot in new American music also, and just new music around the world. So I got a huge dose of great new works there. And while I was there, I had another first exposure, which is then I went and saw The Marriage of Figaro with Kentucky Opera. The orchestra
Yeah.
was on strike. The Louisville Orchestra was on strike
Okay,
at the
okay.
time. And so it was with four hands piano. Amazing. It was
Mm.
amazing. It was so much fun. And it took me back to how I felt as a kid in this musical theater. And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
these interests came together, and I saw this combination of theater, this combination of drama, this combination of music, and the orchestra, and all of these pieces. And it was thrilling. And the orchestra got off strike, and they resolved what they needed to resolve, and they came back and did Tosca was the next show, and
Yeah.
Puccini's Tosca. And that was the first thing I saw with opera firing on all cylinders. And it was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. And from that point on, I was totally addicted. And even though I'm not a singer, I'm not a pianist, I always joke that I have no reason or no right to be in this field. Opera makes amateurs of us all in some ways. It's a very
Yeah.
humbling art form. It's hugely complicated, but I've dedicated my life to the study of it, and
Mhm.
at least my life so far to the study of it. I've been very, very lucky that I have been involved in so many productions and so many highlights and gotten to do great things. I mean, I never would have thought when I saw Tosca that I would someday be doing the LA premiere of Rusalka. I never thought I would
Wow.
do the Chicago premiere of Die Totestadt or the Australian premiere of As One. And I've gotten to have these great landmark moments. So that's it in brief, and that's all the highlights. So it sounds amazing. I mean, it's been bumpier, but I think that sometimes it's good to celebrate the highlights also, and I'm sure we can get more into some of the thornier moments of doing it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. That's a beautiful summary. I'm curious, you have so much experience and you went to school for this and you've worked with groups, everything from, it sounds like, youth ensembles, student ensembles to professionals. I'm curious what advice you can give to young people who are wanting to get into conducting and wanting to study it more seriously.
My first advice is always to be the best musician you can be at whatever you already do.
Mhm.
So for me, I needed to be within, if not first chair on the clarinet,
Yeah.
within striking distance of it every time. I
Mm.
needed to be consistently someone that people considered your opinion positively before I ever tried to get up there. Because the issue with being a conductor is that you have to look at a room full of people doing the world's most amazing thing and say, I should be in charge of that.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it has a sense of like it comes with a sense of ego, a sense of whatever, no matter what, because anyone arrogant enough to look at people doing the most amazing thing in the world and think that they should be in front, there is something there
Mhm.
must be that causes you to do that.
Yes.
So I think that the first step, if you are a student looking to do it, is to be the best musician you can possibly be and get as strong a set of ears as you can. And I don't just mean ears in the way that academia teaches them sometimes. Academia teaches three ears really a lot, which is melody, harmony, and rhythm.
Mhm.
Also, you've got to get ears for articulation, timbre, tone quality, dynamics. When is the last time on a oral dictation you were asked to write the dynamics in? But
Mm.
it's very relevant to a piece. It's very relevant if the articulation is away. And one other piece of that is that if you are sitting next to someone who has the best harmonic ears you've ever heard, you say, "Oh, I don't know, can I do that?" You have things that you can do also. Lean into those things. So
Mhm.
for me, I was always like at the beginning, when I felt weaker because I came from the band, I was really comfortable with dynamic shaping, phrasal shaping, rhythmic shaping, articulation shaping, but I was less comfortable than the choral conductors on what they could do in terms of like just hearing pitch. I mean, some of the choral conductors, especially when you're young and you don't have a full set of skills, they couldn't necessarily rhythmically move with accuracy, but they could really hear like the way, like they just understood pitch in a
Mhm.
slightly different way because they'd been doing that from their whole childhood while we were doing different things.
Mhm.
Lean into your strengths.
Yeah.
Don't just look at your weaknesses. I mean, you need to fix them. You need to patch them up. You need to get
Yeah.
them stronger. But look at your strengths and bring what you have to the table today
Yeah.
because you don't focus on the part of you that's weak
Mhm.
because that's not the thing. Let the ensemble fill in some of those gaps for you as you're developing because you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to do everything and you're in a room full of people. Trust them to be great, but be really specific. Be like, this is staccato. It's got to
Mhm.
have this sound. It's got to have this, so that the things that you are asking for are both correct, concise, and important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. As a composer, I have sort of noticed something similar to what you're saying, which is that sometimes when you lean into your strengths, whether that's, as a composer writing melodies or specifically like the vertical approach, being really into chords, sometimes that leads you to develop your skills in other areas. And if you sort of let that your strengths sort of be in the lead and you feel self-conscious about that, you just lean into that, sometimes that sort of paves the way for you in a beautiful way. Is that sort of something similar? I guess you're saying you see something similar in conducting as well.
I think yes. I think that the that you've got to bring your best to the table instead of thinking about what you don't have yet. We all don't have things yet. Never try to lie about having something you don't
Mm,
have. Like if I go into a room, my French is not the best French in the world. I'm doing Sunderen right now, the Massenet, all French. If I try to tell someone this is how this French word is said, number one, I better be right if I'm
yeah.
going to try to correct someone else. And two, they can tell that my French is not the strongest in the room. So what do I do in that situation? Well, I have a coach, a pianist who speaks French. I'm going to ask the pianist for her opinion. There's no
Yeah.
reason for me not to ask a person in the room who really knows what they're talking about so that
Yes.
I can pretend to know what I'm talking about
Yeah.
and in the end only make myself look silly.
100%. Yeah, I feel like there's this culture in classical music, or at least traditionally there has been, where it's sort of this deification of, artists and this idea that, well, they're almost infallible in this religious sense. And I feel like it's really refreshing when I hear from people like yourself who are, operating in positions of power as a conductor, you're saying, I still am learning from other people. I still have more to learn. I'm growing as an artist. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important also because there are two things that, first off, if we describe someone as being very good at music, we call them virtuous, a virtuoso,
Yeah.
and we've
Mm.
added a moral quality to being good, which means that if someone is good, you have to believe also that if someone can play very well or do something really well, they must also be morally good. And it's really an interesting use of the word
Mm.
to do that. And it's created some culture problems in some ways where everything is excused for it. And then this is funny, but I saw a study that said on Rate My Professor in the music department, male music faculty are very likely to have the word genius applied to them.
Wow.
And we throw the word genius around really I think kind of haphazardly.
Hmm.
Every composer we're ready to call a genius. Every conductor we're ready to call a genius for doing something. There is a little bit of mystery sometimes, perhaps in analysis and how that works. But like when you can really get into analysis, I think that it can come off as like a big achievement. And I think there is some big achievement to analysis also. But is it genius? I don't know that it qualifies truly as a genius act. I'm sure that there are geniuses, but I think that our preparation to use the word and to use the word virtuoso is more of the way that our culture is than of the actual reality of some of the people who receive those words and no attacks on anyone there. I only mean culturally.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. No, that's really sweet. I appreciate your humility as an artist. I feel like that's something I've been learning myself is, I end up having better collaborations with people when there is no ego. You're just entering something with a learner's mindset. And it's just, yeah, it facilitates that collaborative spirit. So, yeah, thank you for that. In your view, this is my next question. In your view, how has the role of conductor been changing and evolving recently? I mean, now everyone's in the industry is freaked out about AI and Suno, and but I'm also thinking about the history of conductors. I think about like Bernstein and Toscanini, and you hear stories about them firing people on the spot. Yeah, how do you feel, and how do you see the role of the conductor and the art form sort of evolving right now?
My impression of the conductor is that they are someone that exists at the middle point
Mhm.
between a lot of things, and that there's like a middle relationship, and that they are part company staff,
Mhm. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
part orchestra musician. In my world, you're part not only so if you think about where I stand in an opera production,
Mhm.
which is raised halfway up in the pit, down from the stage, lower than the audience generally, between the audience and the stage, I think that alone puts you right in the middle. I'm half above ground, half underground, and I'm halfway. I'm almost on stage, but I'm not on the stage, and I'm almost in the audience, but I'm not in the audience.
Mm.
And I think of that as like a really striking reality of like where are you? I'm in this weird central point between everything, but not really belonging to
Yeah.
any specific group entirely. Like, would you be able to say that the conductor is entirely an orchestral musician? I don't think that would be. I mean, they may
Mhm.
also be in addition to being a conductor, but I don't think it's totally fair
Yeah.
to say like that when you're actually conducting, you're doing the same thing they're doing,
Mhm.
any more than are you the same as the audience? Well, you're closer to the audience than the violinist. You know, of the two of you, you are more audience-like than they are. But it so there's this interesting middle ground, and the same is true on the level of administration and artistry in between those. Because so much of my time being a conductor is time spent doing administrative work. Also, not only, you know, and I think that there are people
Uh,
that have it differently where they get to do a whole bunch of conducting, but I don't know how common it is really that you just get to
yeah.
conduct without doing 100 emails, 100
Yeah.
negotiations, 100 things to try to get, you know, your moment, whatever the piece is, you know, and to program an opera, to program in anything, it's a lot of time to get that
Mhm.
going.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to have a really holistic approach to being a producer, being a
Mhm.
musician. I think that the need to be a self-producer is stronger than
Mm.
it's been in a while.
Yeah.
I would say for myself at least, I have not found that you can jump into an institution as easily as perhaps you used to be able to, or perhaps it hasn't happened for me that way.
Mhm.
You know, I've done a lot of freelance. I've done a whole bunch of work this way, which has been fantastic because on one hand, I've traveled the world and I've done all these things, but
Mhm.
it trades stability. So then I've gotten to, you know, whereas some of my other colleagues on the symphony side, they get the
Mhm.
assistant conductor positions. But the assistant conductor position, some of them pay like 30, 40K, you know,
Mhm.
and last 2 years. So it's not like here's this great stability
Yeah.
either. It's
Mhm.
not it's not very much. I mean, maybe it sounds like a lot depending on where you're coming from, but I
Yeah.
mean, it really isn't
Yep.
when you're comparing the level of education and experience it takes to even get close to striking those jobs
Yeah.
um, is a really particular thing. So I think that the conductor really needs to be more of an artist as a whole. And I also think that in personality, that the era of the Stoic conductor is over. The
Hmm.
Strauss, where you look at the pocket watch, that I
Uh,
think that we're done with the Stoics, and I
yeah.
think that we are finishing with the tyrants. I just don't think that if you look at the top levels, I may have heard stories about people being stern or tough or like demanding, but never, not never, but far fewer stories of tyrants compared to what it used to be.
Mhm.
And I mean, just look at Dudamel's whole everything. Look
Yeah.
at how
His
he
career, the trajectory of his career, how that got started and everything.
and how he presents and how like if you just even every picture of him, he's smiling, he's happy,
Yeah.
he seems overjoyed to be there. I've never ever heard from anyone that he's mean to them or
Right.
anything like that, but I'm sure that he expects a high level. I mean, you don't
Mhm.
get to the New York Phil without expecting a high level.
Yes.
So there is a difference in I don't think there's a difference in expectation necessarily.
Mhm.
Do I think we're like wanting less from musicians? I think the answer to that is no. Do
Yeah.
we think that the best way to get there is by treating someone badly? I think that the answer has very much changed. And another thing is that the
Mhm.
orchestra union is very important. You know, it's a hugely significant muscle and it
Yeah.
exists in part because people were treated so badly.
Yes.
Now, sometimes union rules can be really exacting, really specific, like we can't start if it's below a certain degree and then everything has to hold. Those can be challenging, but I would much rather have a situation where there are really exact union rules and we follow them, and then have a situation where people are treated badly.
Mhm.
And I think that there needs to be a bit of, as the culture shifts, I hope that we can get to a place of good faith, but I understand it's just power dynamics and power structures, and everybody has to make sure that they are protected. I don't think that there's anything wrong with getting protected
Yeah.
and making sure
Yeah.
that, you know, we live in a more safe, more fair system.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. I mean, how can you create art? How can you go to these emotional places if you're not feeling safe as an artist, right? Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
This is a little bit more of a sort of personal question. I'm a composer and I love working with, directors like yourself. And I'm curious your advice for composers like myself, maybe professionals, but also maybe young composers. How can they prepare their scores for this collaborative project, or process that you have between conductor and composer?
Sure. I think that a big thing for composers, conductors, every composer wants to work on the art of
Hmm.
composing, which makes a ton of sense because that's what you're actually going to be remembered for, regardless of, that's what, and we can talk about legacy and if that even matters later. But even like as you're alive, that's what people will care about is the art itself and how does it sound and is it good? So worry about that first. But as a conductor, I also really, really benefit a lot from people who have a strong grasp of the craft and what I mean by the craft side of composition is, I mean, the way that you lay things out, your editing, the way that it's on the page, the way that like if you have like a 12/16 bar or something like this, and it takes
Hmm.
up 10 times the space of your 4/4 bar because it has all these a ton in it. Is there a way that you can, edit or find some sort of change? There's little things like this that it's like, how can you work to make the score match as in line as possible with what's standard?
Hmm.
Even as you have it, can you put your ideas in it? And when you have ideas that really break the box, break the box. But if you have an idea that hasn't broken the box, I would say the more that you can notate it in the system that people understand, the faster you'll get the idea from sound, from one imagination to the other. Because really, what do I need to do is I need to get your imagination into mine
Hmm.
as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And the more that you can make it so that we can share that, the easier. And
Hmm.
I think that notation has so much to do with that. And even some of the great, great composers they have a bar here or there where you're like, what in the world is this? Like,
Hmm.
why is this, which is clearly a pickup on the downbeat of one? It's a really hard, and sometimes it makes things way more difficult for the orchestra.
Hmm.
There's a moment in Sandrian that it goes bum 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 bum, except it's after the and of one and two and three. It's just like it's
Hmm.
way worse if it was just and one for the first hit, which is how it feels for
Yeah.
the rest of it, and it ends on two. It just should be on one. Now he's written who knows how many thousands of measures that are perfect. But you when you look at the one measure that's really like
Hmm.
here's this thing,
Yeah.
I think that it's really obvious. And then the other piece in terms of getting your work done, at least in opera, is to have a really strong one sheet, which is a one-page document, basically a resume for the work. It's one
Hmm.
or two pages, but on it you want to have the title of the work, the duration of the work, who wrote the text, did it come from you, is it copyrighted, what's going on here,
Hmm.
what's the orchestration, who is in the show, what's the synopsis,
Hmm.
do you have a link to any video or anything like that? Because when I worked with Thompson Street Opera Company, which specialized in new in premieres or second performances of operas, we received 150 something operas. I don't know, it was a ton every year, and so you're seeing these, and you can pick four.
Hmm.
So the other thing in the craft is build like a really specific, this is what
Yeah.
it is, so that when people are looking at it, they can say, I know why. And answer your why, is that you may write because you have something you need to get out of you.
Hmm.
That's wonderful. That's a great reason to write. We don't
Hmm.
have to listen to
Yeah.
you getting stuff out of you. We want to listen because you have something to tell us, not because it's just something inside of you. So
Hmm.
the intimate work like that, I think that's something really important also is to try to think about what are you saying to other people? What is the difference between a thought you have in your head and a thought that you write
Hmm.
on a paper? Because
Yeah.
if you were going to publish a newspaper, a magazine, or an article, or in anything, even though they don't work that, or even in a smaller way on your social media posts, I'm sure that you think about what you are putting out differently than what you just say to yourself. So that's one other thought is to do it that way, and perhaps that takes, but I want to say also break all those rules, do whatever you want, And do all that because that's the only way. If everybody followed every bit of advice they ever got, they would
Hmm.
go nowhere. But that said, yeah, those are some things I think can make you more marketable at least once
Yeah.
you have some ideas and get them out there and can help focus in on if you want for people to actually perform it, I think you have to say something that people want to share with you.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. The editing side of things. Would you, you know, Alexis, would you be willing to talk to us about the pieces that we're using as the intro and the outro, and just sort of through, talk about your process of working on those and what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you just heard was um, an excerpt from Robin Hayes, The Man Who Woke Up. Robin is a British composer. This piece is really farcical in a lot of ways. Basically, the man wakes up inside of an opera. He's aware that he's inside of an opera. The world is crazy as a result. But Robin's composition style shifts us from his own style into a neoclassical to a neo-romantic. There's a Baroque section before that. And basically, we move a bit through music history until we get these big cluster chords all the way at the end. The piece is very well put together, and it comes with a cat that murders people. So it's a real delight, a real wild card. It's a half-hour opera, and it was one of the more fun ones that we got to do the American premiere of. And that was from
Wow.
my time at Thompson Street Opera Company when I was the music director there.
Wow. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
The other piece on the way out, this one on the way out, the excerpt here is from Rusalka, one of Dvorak's operas. Dvorak wrote, I believe it's 9 operas. You can double check me on that. Rusalka is the one that's remembered. He believed that his operas were his chance to have Czech legacy, Czech culture remembered. And I think that's fair in some ways. And he thought he would be remembered more for his operas than his symphonies. That did not turn out so true. But it is true that his symphonies are more known for their American influence than their Czech influence.
Hmm.
And so Rusalka is solidly, solidly Czech. And here it is sung in English in this, but it's the LA premiere of Rusalka with Pacific
Wow.
Opera Project. Great company, tons of fun, and it was a blast to get to do it.
Awesome. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
So, my last question for you, Alexis, is basically about your upcoming performances. If you have any projects you're excited that you're working on, do you have anything that people should check out?
Well, I think what I would like people to know most about right now is to go to ChicagoCityOpera.com, which is the company I founded in 2019. We are working to make this something really, it already is something really important, but we're growing it. It's exciting. It's a company that does grand operas and grand spaces all over Chicago. And by grand spaces, I mean spaces you may not expect, but are really important to all of us. So, for example, we're doing Cendrillon, Massenet Cendrillon, at the Checkout, which is Access Contemporary Music's new space. The developer was just named Chicago Tribune Musician of the Year for it, Classical Musician of the Year.
Congrats.
Yeah, well, he's fantastic. So the Checkout is an old 7-Eleven that they took, renovated, and
Mm.
made a new venue. So they took something just fantastic. And why are we putting Cinderella there? Well, it's a great Cinderella story. So
Mhm.
we try to find the right piece for the right venue
Oh,
each
that's cool.
time as we find
It's an
these.
experience.
Exactly, and bring it in. Because when you're in Chicago, you can go to Lyric, you can go to Chicago Opera Theater, you can get nice and have these wonderful experiences. They do very different things, of course, but there's a lot of opera here. We're very lucky that way. And so we want to make sure that we can offer you opera up close, opera personal, opera something that you can really feel the way that when someone is singing like that, it can really resonate in your body and the superhuman aspect of singing that we sometimes forget. Because in a recorded world, like if you're listening to this podcast, you can adjust how loud I am on a button.
Mhm.
I can be way louder than I could ever be because of what we have. But in a world of acoustics, the ability to project like an opera singer does is a marvel. And it's something that people sometimes forget until you're right there in a room with them
Mhm.
and have that experience. So this year we're doing that. We're doing Der Rosenkavalier, which is really exciting. And we're doing Der Vampir, The Marschner. So a great season coming up, as well as a work in the coming, which is Laura Kaminsky's The Post Office. We'll be doing the Chicago premiere of Laura Kaminsky's work. Laura Kaminsky is the most produced American opera composer. So she's fantastic. We're so excited to be committing into that and looking right now for when that will be, but that will be within the 26-27 season. So we're really, really excited for that. So ChicagoCityOpera.com. And then beyond that, it's all pieces here and there. I'm returning to Opera Santa Barbara to assist on Albert Gantry, and it'll be fun. And I think there are more things that may or may not be happening, and I'm sure we'll be talking about those soon with whoever I'm meeting with on those.
Sweet. Alexis, if people want to connect with you, maybe they want to even collaborate, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. Either contact ChicagoCityOpera.com and just contact the company where you'll get a hold of me that way. Or you can go to alexandraenyart.com and contact me there. Either of those should work. So that'll be great. And I'm with Marvel Arts Management. So if you're out there and you're hearing and you're like, she should come work, I'm happy to send you towards James Marvel,
Oh,
and
cool.
we'll get that all worked out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Alexis. We're going to listen to some more of your great music on the way out.
Thank you. Thank you.